Samson, Kev.
Oh, yes, 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 of course.
So
I will bring it up
please
now.
do. We've got a bit of footage from early on in the game. This is actually the starting cinematic. Now, makes a very good first impression, as I said to you last week, because as you can see from the cinematics, sort of graphic novel comic style, which is very Infamous coded. So I was a
Mm,
big fan, big
mhm.
fan. Doesn't quite have the same source as Infamous, but I like what I'm seeing. I have rolled credits. It took
Oh,
me
nice.
just over 9.5 hours, so not a crazy long game.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, I'm
Gotcha.
coming to this a little late after the review cycle, right? I think Samson is a ultimately a failed experiment, but one that I deeply appreciate existing.
Okay. I
Um,
would love to know why.
yes, so I think, as I said to you the other week, Samson, and you were switching to gameplay here. It is a very small open world. Obviously, the frame rate, it's not that bad. This is just the footage itself to give you a taste. Um, it is a very small open world, and you are traveling around. You can drive your car, as you're seeing, and you are picking up jobs. So I'm arriving at a destination for a contract. I'm going to have to break into this facility to get $1,000, and you see their time estimation is going to take me from noon to evening of that given day.
Mhm.
So you have a limited amount of time in each day of the story to do things to earn enough money, and at the end of each day, you have a debt that you have to pay off to the mafia. And obviously, if you fail at these missions, you don't get the money, and therefore your debt increases. And if the debt increases, then on subsequent days, thugs will pursue you throughout the open world. So it will make the game more difficult. That in and of itself is an interesting concept. I think on paper, that sounds really cool. And I've seen some articles talking about this is something that GTA 6 could do, right? Where there might be a system where you owe money to a certain NPC. If you don't fulfill that debt in time or whatever, or with enough interest, then they can pursue you and it might cut off a quest, or it might make a vendor unavailable or something. I like that. But as with most things in Samson, unfortunately, it's underbaked.
Mm.
Um, it's a very surface level game where it presents some interesting ideas. And I think visually it actually looks quite good.
Yeah, I was gonna say I actually what we're seeing like from a visual aspect, like especially the jacket, like the textures, I think everything looks pretty nice here.
Yeah. Like the world design as well, the design of the open world is very appealing. I think that for as small as it is, it feels very familiar. By the end of your playthrough, you kind of know where things are. But as you're seeing here, the combat, very repetitive, very one note. You're just punching people. You can throw things, which is cool, but um, the animations throughout are very, very janky.
Mhm.
A lot of the gameplay systems, whether it is the punching and the parrying and the kicking, whether it's picking up items, whether it's driving around, nothing feels quite right. And I can't quite put my finger on why it doesn't feel quite right, but it just feels like unfinished. I feel like I mean, we use this quite a lot when we're talking about games that we sort of kind of like but don't quite love. It's on the cusp of doing really cool things and doing them very well,
Mhm.
but it never gets there. Um, and I think that ultimately I can't really recommend the game to people, certainly not in the state that it's in. Performance, I didn't have really any issues. I didn't have a crash. There were a few frame drops, but I think the fact that the animations are off and you can kind of just get ganged up on, I f- it makes the gameplay experience feel choppy, even though it might not
Mhm.
be. So there's a weird disconnect in my head where I couldn't quite get past it. And on top of that, what you're seeing is basically all you do the entire time. There's, I think, 3 or 4 mission types. 2 of them involve you going to a place and beating up people like you're seeing. One of them is like car chases, and the other is like you going to a location and just looking for objects to pick up. So things become very, very repetitive, very, very fast. Probably within the first hour and a half. So not long after where I was speaking to you here. So you see, I've just finished a job,
Hmm.
the first job actually. You see the Steam achievement popping up. You get the money. See, there's due today, so there's nothing. So this is the first mission. You get some XP, and it ticks the time up. So the ramping pressure is really cool, and it transitions automatically to evening. That's again really interesting systems, but they don't gel well, and like I don't know. Exploring this world that you're seeing in the map, it feels more checklisty than it should for a game this short.
Mm.
So I think that it's a $25 game as far as I'm aware.
Hmm. Yes, it
Um,
is.
and they mentioned, I think in their promo prior to release, that they said that they would rather over deliver on a cheaper game than under deliver on a pricier one. And I think to give Samson some credit, I think that for a $25 game, this isn't actually that hard of a sell, at least for the amount of content that you get, and for the interesting mechanics that it introduces. But I also think that in the failed experiment comment that I made, it there is the restraint that I have where any recommendation that I could give is going to come with very heavy caveats. And I think that this game is going to appeal to a specific type of person, but you really have to be quite forgiving to get through the entire game without feeling not hard done by, but kind of bored and ready for it to be over. And I'm not sure for a game that took me less than 10 hours to finish, that's quite where you want to be. So yeah, conflicted.
Yeah, no, certainly. When I'm looking at this, especially when you were showing when we were showing the combat sections, my first thought was the animations don't look like they're actually connecting. You know, like
No.
when you have combat, I would say like Arkham combat or even something like Sifu. Like when you punch someone, it's like the fist is connecting. Like you almost feel that connection in your keyboard, your controller, whatever you're playing. This, it kind of just looks like you're flailing arms and the enemies are moving because the hitboxes are registering something, as opposed to having that good feeling combat. And obviously I didn't play it, but that's what like my first impression of this combat was.
Yeah, it is a very spammy game where you are just hitting left mouse button or whatever button on console to just do the light punches, and that will get you through most combat encounters, to be frank. Obviously, you've got the melee weapons, as I spoke about, and you can throw them, and that does help, but it feels the same, you
Do you
know?
get guns at all? Is it
Um,
because this
I
reminds me
I
of like a GTA game, right? Like,
I didn't find any gun.
uh, okay.
It seemed to me, unless I completely missed something, to be a purely melee game.
Mm,
And there is a slight, it's not in any of the footage, but you can upgrade with skill points that you earn from completing missions and whatnot. There is a skill tree that's mainly just like get more health, deal a bit more damage. You do get a few new moves, like you can grab enemies and throw them, but that's about as expanded the combat becomes. And that was something that I said last week, where I was like, I'm early, so I don't want to sort of cast a final judgment on how in depth the combat gets.
hmm.
Um, Unfortunately, that is about how deep the combat gets. What I played.
Damn.
Uh, Again, you know, I think the game isn't trying to fool you, to convince you that it's something that it's not. It is very upfront about what it is, and that I can appreciate. And again, as much as I have a lot of problems with the game, I still think that I'm glad that I played it, first off. And second of all, I think that with common consensus, there could be something here that a number of games in similar genres could really learn from and do really cool things with. And you would naturally have to give credit to Samson in some way for being sort of the progenitor of those ideas. But yeah, I mean, your comment about the combat, right, looking floaty, it is, and feels like
Mhm.
it doesn't connect. What I will say though, which doesn't come across obviously from the footage, it has to be game feel. When you are throwing the punches, they do feel weighty. There is like a meatiness, a heaviness to
Okay.
Samson. And I do like that because it makes the combat feel and certainly sound grittier. But again, there is that disconnect inherent when the hits aren't properly connecting and the animations aren't lining up and the enemies just ragdoll in very strange ways. It's like it's a game of two halves, you know. I think like on the surface level, it presents very well. It's got cool mechanics, but when you're actually in the moment to moment, it's quite rote, quite repetitive, feels underbaked. Um, so I think, you know, I mean, we don't do scores and stuff, but I would
Mhm.
say it is sort of sitting in that 6 area, which I think is the general consensus. I think that there are moments in the game, both in terms of like general gameplay and sort of moment to moment, but story as well, as baseline as the story is, to be fair, that it does sort of reach the 7 and 8. But overall, there are those detractions that pull it back down a few points. Um, so yeah, I think I appreciate the devs trying things out. Didn't quite come together,
Mhm.
but I'm glad that they took a shot.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's $25. So if people are interested, it's not a heavy ask, and certainly they'll go on sale. And of course, code provided. I don't remember if we mentioned that, but
Yes, correct.
yes.